Welcome to our meeting. Good to see a nice turnout here. Dick Nuff is not here, who usually tells us about new members and guests, but I understand there are a few guests here. So whoever brought them, say again?
There's new members too, right?
And, okay. So whoever,
I brought a guest.
okay.
My cousin, Dick Nemiroff.
Dick Neveroff, welcome. And we'd like to...
Here's the name tag for you. These are we can know who you are. You're not polished.
Anybody else bring a guest? Yes, could you introduce?
Barry Camden.
Okay, thank you. Here's the name. Could you pass this down for Barry? Anybody else?
Don O'Brien.
Hey, Ed, new member.
And a new member? Welcome, could you?
I already got a name tag.
Okay. We usually have a little exercise to get a new shirt. Did you get your shirt yet? Well, come on up.
Yeah. You're going to be anointed. My shirt.
It costs him $10.
Yeah.
So, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
They cut it off.
So, we're going to get a photograph in a second.
Okay.
So, we'd like to welcome our new member. And are we going to get a photograph? New member. Are you? Come on over. Did you get a shirt yet?
No.
Okay. When you get your shirt, we'll have your ceremony.
Okay.
Okay.
That's on the look forward.
We got it? Okay.
Oh, good. Oh, yep. That was it. I don't have to say anything.
No.
Good.
Actually,
Yes, you actually do have to say something. Introduce yourself and tell us about
yeah.
You want me to say
Yeah,
something?
please.
Hi. I'm Hal. Oh, cry.
Talk to the mic.
Here.
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Hal Feldbaum, new member. I am a CPA, so I am going right from here to work. But anything along those lines, just let me know.
And we now have a potential treasurer.
And I could be a potential treasurer.
So Hal, as another gesture for joining us, you and our guests today, please go to the head of the line because you'll start the breakfast and then the rest of us will follow you. So the guests, please get to the head of the line.
Problem, man. You can eat everything.
All right, thank you.
Okay. And since our religious chairman is not here, Gary, could you lead us in the Himotzi? Amen. Okay, welcome aboard. Before we get into the business of the meeting, let me just make one kind of interesting and perhaps even an embarrassing announcement. We've had a contingency plan on the books in case our speaker doesn't show. And the contingency plan, oh, wait a minute. No? The contingency plan was that we have a series of Bible studies on CDs, and the person in charge of that is not here, so our contingency plan is... So what we also decided as a last-minute issue, in case our speaker doesn't show, we're going to do a kind of impromptu comedy night. So we're going to do the business at hand, and then to give you some time to prepare, we'd like you to come up with at least one joke. Come up to the microphone and give us one joke or more, and then...
Don't say that. Rob's here.
So you have some time to come up with some comedy routine if you like some jokes for us to hear. Meanwhile, let me get started with the business. As many of you are aware, there's been some threats to the Jewish community, and all the JCCs throughout the area have been coming up with their own plans for safety. If you saw the article in The Voice by our own JCRC, Jewish Community Relations Council president, he was urging, as part of our desire to get safety into the Jewish community, to get more involved with the law enforcement community. I'd like you to listen to just one paragraph in the voice. So in terms of safety, he says, it's for this reason that we're constantly encouraging and supporting opportunities for members of our community to mix and mingle with law enforcement when they can. And here's where it's interesting. As an example, for the better part of the past 20 years, we have partnered with the South Jersey Men's Club in hosting the South Jersey Law Enforcement Appreciation Breakfast, attended by upwards of 200 police officers and law enforcement professionals. He's partners with us. Mike has been Mr. Law Enforcement for how many years now?
22.
So for the new members here, for people who are unfamiliar, we've hosted a law enforcement breakfast. And it took a tremendous amount of planning and organizing, and it's been very successful for the number of years. So although JCRC is taking credit, I think, they're giving us some credit. Yes, Len?
There's an article that I had the pleasure of publishing in The Voice this past edition. It's on immigration. I don't know if any of you have read it.
Yeah, I read it. Yeah.
You read it. And it's about history, about a man named Breckinridge Long. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Sure.
But Breckinridge Long was in charge of issuing visas during the early 40s. And he withheld 190,000 visas because he didn't want Jews coming into the country because he feared they will be communists or anarchists and things like that, not even children. And that's a piece of history that very, very few people know about. So there's an explanation of it in this past Voice, and I think you'll find it interesting to read. Thank you.
Thanks, Len. Sir,
Do they know who's making these threats yet? Have they figured
you know
it
as
out?
much as I do.
No, there's still construction.
Searching.
Ken,
What's the date of this year's law enforcement?
we're not having it this year. We're skipping 1 year, as per the law enforcement people's own request. Yeah, is that right?
Excuse me, one more. Will they offer learning how to use guns?
No, you're talking to, in other words,
How about Michael? Mike, will they offer learning how to use weapons?
We can arrange something.
That would be good. I'd like to.
It wouldn't be through them officially.
Okay.
okay, the next order of business, I don't know if you're aware, the board, of course, has been very aware that Don, our previous president, has putting together something called a taskmaster. Our concern is not just getting new members, but retention of members and sharing the responsibilities, because everything that gets done here, I thought it might be our speaker. Everything gets done here is usually done by a variety of people who take initiative and leadership. And what he's doing is putting it on paper, who does what, who replaces the people who do what. And he has an announcement to make with regard to office holding.
Thanks, Ed. There are numerous opportunities to get involved, and I'm putting together the slate along with Bob and Rich and Mike for the upcoming year. So if you have any interest in running for office, just see one of us, let us know, and we'll follow through with it. But, we'd like to see new people getting involved, and there's a lot of hand-holding. We don't put anybody out on an island and leave them to themselves. There's a great deal of support in every office. So please let us know if you have any interest whatsoever. Oh,
Not just officers, but anybody who wants to serve on the board. We have positions on the board that are without, what we call, quote, without portfolio. And if you're interested in serving on the board, see how things run, and possibly moving into one of the elected positions, let us know. We'd be more than happy to
How often does the board meet?
accommodate you.
board meets usually once a month as needed.
When you say running, what do you mean by running?
Well, if you run, then there's an election, and if you're voted in, then you become that office.
Who does the voting?
The membership.
Oh, the membership.
At our March, April meeting, I think it is. I'd have to look at the bylaws to see what month we do that. But again, we're looking for new people. We want new people. We want new ideas. And just from the fantastic turnout today, it's great. Mike?
Yeah, I think, especially for some of the newer members, it's important to realize many of us get into the position where we say, well, I've worked all my life and now it's up to others. Screw that. We're just like you.
Yeah.
So even though you may have thought that before in other organizations, no. Everybody does something. That means nobody is pushed to do it too much. All right? Just want to point that out. Thank you.
And just for example, you know, like we have our next president after Ed, that's Marty Raffner. And after Marty, we have our next president already lined up, Ed Stein. So we have the next 4 years or so covered as far as the presidency is concerned. And, you know, again, there's a great deal of hand-holding. Like, Ed will, I'm sure, be the first one to tell you if he has a question. He has 6 past presidents that are right here that will jump right in and try to offer solutions. So
Nobody listens to them.
How true.
and 50-50s if you're interested.
Oh, yeah, I meant this. And to illustrate how, you know, how much we rely on people, were the guys that helped out with the food preparation this morning, just stand, please? Jay, Ned, Steve.
How about acknowledging the people who worked on Super Sunday last week?
Very good. We were responsible for helping out with food preparation for last week's Super Sunday. So anybody who did that, could you please rise?
Last month's Super Sunday.
Yeah, whatever it was.
There are 4 guys
Last month,
who
yeah.
are not here today who also were involved in that. And it was really a no muss, no fuss. We were in and out in less than 40 minutes.
Thank you. And Don, can I suggest you send an email out with regard to running for office and interest?
We'll certainly do that through Randy, and just remember, nothing happens unless somebody makes it happen. A lot of little things add up to a lot of favorable results for us, and a lot of good press.
Speaking of Super Sunday, it's not on my agenda, but since you raised it, how many guys handled the phones as well, besides me? Got 1, 2, 3, good. And there was also Super Week, where we came back to handle phones that night. Yeah, Len usually does the envelopes. So, you know, South Jersey Men's Club, you know, our commitment is to serve the Jewish community, and hopefully even next year's Super Sunday we'll even do more. Just a few other pieces of announcement. We are working very hard on getting a new webpage. I don't know if anybody wants to make any statements about that. Marty's not here. So hopefully soon we'll be able to announce that we have a new, is it a site? Is that what you call it? Website. If you get to know me more, you know I'm still in 1945 in terms of my, I have a flip-top phone.
Does it have a cord?
You know, it's interesting. When I had my office in Philadelphia, people used to come into the office and point to the typewriter and ask me what it was. Just another announcement. We finally... Oh, we have our speaker. Hi, why don't you come on over? There's a seat over here. Save your jokes, folks, for another time.
Women president, please.
We have 2 seats right here.
Thank you.
And I took that Prozac for nothing.
It won't go to waste on you.
It does have a side effect, and I don't know what I'll do tonight. So we do have an announcement. We finally signed with the JCC. We have an agreement to be partnered here. Is there anything you want to make an announcement about that at all, or say anything about it? Yeah. Do you want to say anything about our part of the rent is going specifically to a... Okay.
We as a club make a commitment for a certain amount of money for 10 meetings, and we usually end up paying for 12 even though we don't use the room 12 months. This year we found out through some of the committees I'm on that our lunch program is in dire need of funding. So we are directing our rent to that fund. and we'll get a picture in the paper and a big size check and all the publicity that we can use. But anybody that wants to do something good from the graciousness of their heart, we have in our community 10,000 people that don't eat a hot meal every day. And 8,000 of them are Jews. It's a little scary because I always thought all Jews were rich. The old joke of difference between a rich Jew and a poor Jew. The poor Jew cleans his own Rolls Royce. Well, it's not true. Okay? If you have, it takes a commitment of $100, $50, directed to Marcy at the senior department, and we charge $2.50. We don't. They charge $2.50 for a hot meal, 5 days a week, no questions asked. And the people that can't afford it, we market paid so they can walk through the door and hold their head up. It's just a nice gesture, and it means an awful lot to people to at least know they're going to have one full meal. And for all the guys that pay their dues and all, that's where your money goes. You know, we're not out partying anymore since he became president. And I appreciate all your efforts. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob. And here's just another indication that the Men's Club isn't just a place to have breakfast and camaraderie and to associate with our brother Jews, but it's to serve the Jewish community. And I want to thank Rob for bringing this problem to our attention, because we earmarked our rent for that purpose. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
What's the rest of the deal?
We have to pay rent, but we earmarked it.
But I'm talking about storage, anything else that was involved in the deal?
Yeah, well, we have storage. We have a permanent place for that. Possibly there's going to be eventually
An exhibit that we could show our awards?
Yeah, but we're still talking about that.
Oh, okay.
Also, with regard to food, Jewish Family Service is going to be doing a food sort after Passover, so we'll probably need some volunteers. We'll have an announcement made at some point soon regarding the food sort. Also, I see we have one gentleman here. Oh, sorry, Steve. Bob?
All right, gentlemen, we worked basically 4 years on getting this agreement done. And with the help of Rob Sachs, we finally got everybody to sign off. This isn't, just so that you understand what this entitles us to, if you remember that before we started meeting here, we met at several other places in the area looking for what we felt would be the appropriate place for us to have meetings. We finally reached an agreement with the JCC. This is our place, okay? There's no time limits on it. We used to have a year-to-year agreement. That is not the case any longer. It's an agreement until canceled by either party, giving proper notice. And we don't foresee that ever happening, considering all the contributions we make to them and all of the good things they do for us. In addition, to clarify, there is discussion as to a place for us to put our memorabilia. There is a dramatic shortage of space in this building. And we're working with the JCC, and if there is space that will be made available, we will be putting up our plaques, and hopefully we'll be able to get a cabinet to store more stuff in. But right now, we have storage in the kitchen so that we don't have to carry things in and out of the building. And maybe a little foreshadowing, but you guys all understand all of the issues that came about because of the threats made to the JCCs. Well, there's something they call site hardening. That's the security term. And there's going to be considerable site hardening here. And that will have some effect on what you bring in, what you can take out, all this stuff, and it will come, okay? It's not an if, it's a when. Yes, Al?
Are you saying that if we bring in a gym bag, we might be searched at some
That is an absolute possibility, okay? That's just the way it is. Yeah, Don?
That's for you, Al.
Also, as part of that agreement, we changed our bylaws to be consistent with the JCC.
That's correct. The JCC, in case many of you are unaware, is an open agreement. In other words, you don't have to have a religious affiliation of any kind to join the JCC. Since we accept JCC members as our members, we have changed our bylaws so that we now will accept basically non-Jews within certain limitations, because we still are a Jewish-based organization.
But we still call ourselves South Jersey Men's Club.
We've always been South Jersey Men's Club. That is, Steve, it has nothing to do with anything.
It's not South Jersey Jewish Men's Club.
Tell them our official.
Our official name is the South Jersey Men's Club, an association of the Hebrew the YMHA, Young Men's Hebrews Association. Okay.
Thank you.
Also, just as a sidebar, the board meets once a month, and they give us that room at no charge. So we are grateful for that. We actually have one person that joined us from the softball team. Welcome. Well, and I got an email with regard to softball. We're probably past our softball days, most of us, but they are interested in getting younger. And if you have sons or other people that you know who might be interested in playing, there will be an email sent out inviting those people to consider joining the team. They have to join the South Jersey Men's Club in order to play. So they're hopeful they'll get a little younger. I knew I had to stop playing when I almost spit up going from first to third. That's true.
Did you stop at second first?
It's usually when we have to go to the bathroom.
Was that your sexual habits or actually?
For those, yes.
Yeah, quick question on another upcoming event, Mideast Institute. Do we have any more involvement with that, or are we totally?
No, they don't want us involved at all, except to promote it, which is on your table. There's some flyers on the table. The Mideast Institute went from daytime to nighttime.
Right.
And somebody else? Yeah, so we're done with that. For those of you who are expecting the prayer service to precede our meeting, we don't have a space yet, so that's going to be delayed. Just a couple of other notes. Marty and I attended, if you're familiar, we are part of the Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, and the region is called the Middle Atlantic Region. Marty and I attended a meeting the other day of all the presidents from South Jersey and Pennsylvania, and they're going to try to keep doing that to promote more interaction with the men's clubs from the synagogues. In addition, we will be going to a leadership conference in April. I'm going to try, Marty and I will go, and I'm trying to get the next two president-elects to attend, and possibly Rob Sachs as well. A couple of announcements regarding programming. Dave Swartz is not here today, but we're hopeful to have the following programs put into effect. One is called, is it Chumetz Hoedown? Is that how you call it? Apparently there was a tradition years ago that after Passover, the guys would get together for dinner, and we're going to do it again. It's going to be Tuesday, April 18th. The question I have for you is, we looked at two sites for having it where we can get some designated area. One was at Ponzio's, which would cost us about $28 a person. And the other is a Chinese buffet, which costs us about $12 per person. So the board asked me to take a vote. If you're interested in either of those two, how many would prefer Ponzio's at $28? How many would prefer the buffet at $12? What did you say about rich Jews?
The buffet could be $50. It's a Chinese buffet. That's what we're going.
Okay. We're selecting one of two places. We'll let you know. One is on 38, and I think it's called Ruby's. The other is Ichiban. Okay. So we'll let you know. Also in the works, yes.
Steve, does anybody know of a place that recommend, like a Chinese buffet, for instance, that may have a side room? No? Okay.
Is that for family or just family?
It's for anybody you want to bring. You could bring your girlfriend and your wife.
Like the breakfast.
Yeah, it's going to be at night. Also, I'm told that the experience can't be matched for at least one time. We're talking about a trip to Harold's Deli. So we'll send an announcement. We'll look for carpooling. I'm told it's an experience that you have to have at least once.
How many are interested?
With,
One sandwich will feed everyone.
yes. If you're not aware, Harold's Deli is supposed to be like you get these monstrous sandwiches. But just for my awareness, how many might be interested? It would probably be a weekday. Okay, so Dave Swartz is going to put that together. We'll try to get some carpools together. Also, this is very, very important, so let me have your undivided attention. If you remember, we did a fundraising with Jewish National Fund to help get a fire truck for the fire in Israel. And boy, did this group come through. You guys were amazing. The board talked about getting another fundraising activity, and of course with Jews we talked about food, and MAR had suggested a potluck dinner. Middle Atlantic region suggested a potluck dinner. But you can't have a potluck dinner here because many of us would bring food that would not be kosher, and they require kosher food here. They would also charge us. So we talked about getting a Reform synagogue to go in with us. So Dave Swartz and I met with men's club people at Temple Emmanuel right across the street. And their programming was such that they did not have the ability or the time for a potluck dinner, and what they suggested instead is a joint meeting. Our next meeting then is not going to be here next month. It's going to be at Temple Emmanuel, and an email will go out. It's going to be Sunday, March 19th, so save the date, Sunday, March 19th. The speaker is going to be their rabbi who's going to speak about being Jewish in a Christian society. It's going to be a fundraising activity, but since we've already done our part, the fundraising contribution that we're going to be making is the $7 breakfast is going to go toward the fire fund. So you will not feel obligated in any way to make any more contribution unless you want to. Their men's club is going to take that money and put it into the fire fund, and they're going to do their own fundraising campaign. They didn't even know about the fire, and they jumped at the idea of having an activity where they can do a fundraising. So please save that date. We are not going to meet here next month. It's going to be Sunday, March 19th. Same time, 9:15. They're going to need just a couple of guys to help out with the food prep, but they don't want too many. So I've already got 3 guys. I think, Rich, are you still here? I think Rich agreed he would come for the food prep at the next meeting in Temple. I'll go. Steve Horowitz said he would go. So maybe we just need... No, we bring nothing.
Over there.
Sir.
Question about the film festival.
Yeah, it's going to come up. Jay, would you be willing to be the 4th guy at the next? Okay, so we have 4 guys. That's all they need. Dave Wynn, you have an announcement to make? Oh, also, we're planning on possibly doing a Trenton Thunder game. We'll have some announcement about that soon.
Hi, as part of our Good Neighbor policy with the JCC, there are 2 major events that the JCC runs every year. One is the Arts, Books, and Cultural Festival every year in November, and the other one is the Jewish Film Festival, which is held in the spring. As part of our our participation with the JCC, is that we have over the last few years bought a discount ticket. Now, what the discount ticket is, usually it's 10% off the list price of the ticket if you buy 10 tickets or more at any time. And so, coming up with the Jewish Film Festival, which is the 19th to the 26th of March, I brought in the brochure and discussed with the board as to which movie they felt would be most appropriate for the guys here. And we then voted on one film, and I'll get to that in a second, and I bought the 10 tickets. The movie price if you bought it directly, is $10. At 10% discount, it's $9. So we spent $90 buying those 10 tickets. The movie we picked is the last movie to be shown, and it's a fantastic movie. Let me just read for you. You all have a brochure on your table. It's the last movie listed. It's called A Grain of Truth. Let me just go through it real fast. It's about a prosecutor who, and this is a Polish movie, who leaves Warsaw and then moves to southern part of Poland. He's asked to investigate a strange and mysterious murder case. When he does it, he then finds in the investigation that it's somehow, people believe it's tied to Jewish ritual killing. And there becomes a wave of anti-Semitism. And he has to wade through all of that in order to find out what actually happened in order to solve the crime. And in discussing it with the board, I gave them other options too. They felt that this was the movie that would be most appropriate, that they felt that most of you guys here would like it. So I understand, I gave it to Randy, and I saw Randy here a second ago. He sent out an email telling everybody that I have the tickets to sell today. I've already sold 3 tickets. There are 7 tickets left. Hopefully I can sell as many as possible today. The movie we have is again the 26th of March, Sunday night, 7:30 at the Ritz-Carmichael Theater. So if anybody has an interest, and by the way, it can be for your wife and family too. It's just, and we need to sell the 10 tickets. So if you have any interest in buying 1 or more tickets, please come to see me. I'll be here after the meeting, and I'll be glad to accept your money at that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
By the way, if you're interested, please go to as many movies as possible. But this is the one that the board approved for the club.
You want to say anything? Because I don't know what you're doing. Is this the...
That we donated.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just want to tell everybody that we collected $100,000 and we donated Magen David to Jerusalem. It's from the Camden's area in South Jersey.
Okay, thank you. Rich, Yom HaShoah?
Good morning. A couple things. We had a lot of guys missing this morning, away on vacation and such, Florida trips, cruises. And a lot of guys did show up to make up for the lack of people. And that's what we mean, everyone has to help. And we had a lot of help this morning. So I do appreciate it for setting up the breakfast. Ed, real quick, mentioned about the Trenton Thunder. We will be going to Trenton Thunder. I'll be sending out some dates. We'll probably be doing April and May, hopefully. I'll send out dates, and you can send back which dates are good for you. And we have 2 choices, either just the game alone, or they have a picnic area where we'll have food along with the tickets. So you can send me your preference. So we will be sending out that email.
Do we bring our food or they supply?
No, they supply. You can't bring food into the stadium. No food or drinks. And the food is not kosher. This year, the Community Holocaust Remembrance Ceremony, Yom HaShoah, will be again Sunday, April 23rd, 2017. And they're switching out the venues from now on. Depending upon who's the chair of the Tri-County Board of Rabbis, will be having it in their synagogues. And this year it's going to be at Adith Emanuel in Mount Laurel. So it's a little further away than having it here at the JCC or across the street. So put it on your calendars, Sunday, April 23rd. It starts at 7 o'clock. South Jersey Men's Club has always been an important part of the Yom HaShoah program. We help it any way we can. One way, especially this year, is we've always provided transportation. And since it's a little further away for the seniors, there will be a handful of people who will need transportation. So when I send out the email, please tell me if you're available to pick up and to return. It's very important, because otherwise they'll have no way to get to the ceremony. This year, the speakers will be local Holocaust survivor Terry Herskovitz and her daughter Judy Wismore. And they'll be telling their story about the Holocaust. So again, Sunday, April 23rd, 2017. An important part of our help is that we do hand out the yellow Yortzeit candles. And as always, the South Jersey Men's Club has been important because the money, any money that we make over and above the cost of the candles goes to the Goodwin Holocaust Education Center. So we do take donations. A case of candles is $72. We take a case, half a case, 2 cases, quarter of a case, whatever you want to send. And so if you can send it to the South Jersey Men's Club, Mark on the show program, all that money will go to the Holocaust Education Committee. So again, it's Sunday, April 23rd at 7 o'clock. And that'll be an important day because we also have a general meeting, I think, that day too. So we'll have a general membership meeting that morning, and then I'll need to see you at Adith Emanuel on a Sunday night. Thank you.
He's going to send out a notice.
Yeah, we send a notice.
What time for volunteers?
Volunteers come at least 5:30, 6 o'clock. We get the candles together and get everything set up. And we might have to help for parking. See, they're talking about it. Because the parking is a little different, and if it's, they have it off-center, they sometimes have shuttle buses. So they're trying to figure that out.
All right. Mike has an announcement about convention.
Yes, Bob Greenberg mentioned about the awards in passing, and for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, we're part of the International Federation of Jewish Men's Clubs, and it's from at least the United States and Canada and a few other countries. And every 2 years they have a convention. This time it's going to be very close. It's going to be in Washington, D.C. in July. It's a wonderful opportunity to learn about men's clubs, enriching your men's clubs, how to enrich your own life, and I would strongly urge you to go. About the awards, every 2 years they also have awards in a group of categories. Could be for best social action program, best technology program, there's a whole slew of them. And even though we are usually between 80 and 110, 115 members, and there are men's clubs out there that have upwards of 1,000 members, your South Jersey Men's Club has won more awards than any other club in the world. And the reason isn't because of any one of us, or 2 of us, or 3 of us, because everybody does something sometime. So there'll be information about the convention coming up, and there'll be subsidies to help pay for it. Any questions about it? Thank you.
And in terms of people doing things for the men's club, we are eventually going to be setting up a recruitment table because we have our new brochures ready to go. And the recruitment table is going to be downstairs. We're going to be inviting other people to come into the men's club. And we'll probably need a volunteer besides board members. And we'll let you know. You need... Also, as another activity to support the Jewish community, 3 of us met at the Lions Club for a kind of a group discussion. Lions Gate. Sorry. Sounds... Lions Gate.
About the same age.
Bob and Steve Horowitz, Mike and myself participated in that activity. If you remember, Dave Swartz reported on this last month. So if we do it again, we might need a few more volunteers to come in, and there's a breakfast meeting, and you can have a discussion with some of the guys from the Lions Gate.
Second Thursday of the month.
Yeah, second Thursday of the month. Okay, so Dave Swartz is not here to introduce our speaker, and I don't have a biographical statement because I didn't get to her in time, but there's a story behind our invitation to Andrea Heyman. For those who don't know or don't recall, I'm still on the board of the Jewish Community Relations Council, and at a meeting at the JCRC, there was an introduction of brand new members, and one of them sat right next to me. And I guess I'm still alert and can think and react. And Andrea and I started talking. I found out what she does for a career, and I thought she'd be a great addition to our speaking agenda. I told Dave Swartz about it, and he invited her. I'm very interested in her topic because ever since the Israel boycott and divestment movement has been going on, the college campuses have not been a very rewarding or friendly place for a lot of Jewish students. So I'm really interested to hear what's going on in Stockton University. Andrea is involved with the Hillel Association. So I'd like to welcome Andrea Heyman to our meeting.
All right, good morning, everyone. So thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm really grateful to be here with you this Sunday. Yes, I am the Hillel Director and also the Young Leadership Director for the Jewish Federation of Atlantic and Cape May Counties. So we fund 100% the budget of the Hillel on Stockton University's campus. It's 100% donation based, so just throwing that out there. So for the talk today, I would be more than happy to answer questions, but if you could just leave it to the end of the presentation, I'd greatly appreciate it, just so we can get through it. And I do have handouts, so I'll be kind of giving you a heads up if you want to look at something on a certain page. I didn't know what the tech situation would be like, so I hope the handouts are useful to you today. And finally, the talk will kind of be in 3 sections. The first part, I thought it was important to kind of talk about the history of Hillel, and it's really relevant, especially with what's going on today. Just a show of hands, how many of you were active in Hillel at some point or had a family member or a friend that was active in Hillel? Okay, great. So we'll talk a little bit about the history of Hillel, and then I'm going to talk about the Hillel chapter on Stockton University's campus. For those of you who don't know where Stockton is, it's in the Pine Barrens, about 12 miles away from Atlantic City. And then we're going to talk about some of the current issues that American college students are facing on campus. So the origins of the Hillel organization can be traced back to a young rabbinic intern by the name of Rabbi Benjamin Frankel, who's pictured on page 2 in your packet. He was a rabbinic intern at Temple Sinai in Champaign, Illinois, from 1921 to 1923 doing pulpit work. But on his own volition, he went over to the University of Illinois and started engaging with some of the Jewish students there that were there. There were about 300 Jewish students at the time at University of Illinois, and he was noticing that a lot of these Jewish students were struggling in terms of coming to terms with their American and Jewish identities. A lot of these students were children of immigrants, and they were kind of looking for a place in the American Jewish community that was changing drastically with the waves of immigration that had been going on in the community. At the time, college students were dealing with a lot of the similar issues that American students are dealing with today, specifically anti-Semitism and discrimination. And these things weren't anything new. At the time, many college campuses had quotas, particularly for Jewish students. So this was something that Jewish students just kind of had to deal with, unfortunately. There were Jewish organizations that were working with college students, either they were locally or at a national level. But the thing was that these Jewish organizations, they were working for students. It was basically like giving and the students were taking, and there was really nothing substantial that was coming out of the work that was being done. So it just wasn't making an impact. So something needed to change.
Andrew, I'm sorry, I hate to interrupt you, but you're talking about quotas. That was a quota to limit the amount of Jewish students on campus, or a quota to allow a certain number on campus?
So it was a quota that they would allow Jewish students, but only up to a certain amount on campus, of course. So in 1923, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Edward Chauncey Baldwin was a professor of English at the University of Illinois, and he happened to not be Jewish. And he went up to one of his colleagues by a gentleman of the name Rabbi Louis Mann and asked a question of him. And the quote is, "Don't you think the time has come when a Jewish student might educate his mind without losing his soul?" I found this quote really impactful and kind of surprising that somebody, especially not in the Jewish community, would care so much about, what was going on with Jewish college students on campus at the time. And his concerns were so deep that he brought this to his colleague, who happened to be a rabbi. So we'll put those two on hold for a minute and jump back to our rabbi intern, Rabbi Frankel. So at this point, it's 1923. He ends his rabbinic internship at Temple Sinai. He's signed on as a pulpit rabbi under the condition that he is allowed to continue doing work at the University of Illinois in this part-time Jewish organization that he started on his own time. So Rabbi Mann and Professor Baldwin and Rabbi Frankel come together to kind of discuss this question that, this non-Jewish professor brings up to him and says, how can we better fund this Jewish organization? I think this rabbi is onto something. So they call a meeting, a lunch meeting, with a lot of prominent Jewish leaders in the Chicago community, including Julius Rosenwald, who was an executive for the Sears organization at the time. And within one lunch meeting, they secure $12,000 for this Jewish organization. So, granted, in the mid to early 1920s, $12,000, when I checked with an inflation calculator online, is the equivalent of about $170,000 worth of money in this day and age. So for me as a Hillel, I would be more than happy to receive a budget of any of that kind of amount. So now we have the University of Illinois, this Jewish student organization, has funding. And now on page 3, there's a picture. They rent a room on a barber shop, above the second floor of a barber shop. So it's a handful of students. And now this Jewish organization is finally picking up steam and going somewhere with housing and with funding. So Rabbi Frankel and his students, they decide on the name Hillel. And one of Rabbi Frankel's colleagues and eventually one of his successors in the Hillel organization, they decide on the name Hillel because Hillel is a symbol for a quest for higher learning. It's a beautiful name, and it actually appealed to the Christian fellowship because at the time, Rabbi Hillel was virtually a contemporary of Jesus. And back in those days, the Jewish community still felt this need that they needed to have some sort of seal of approval from the Christian community that was, that they were living amongst. So the name Hillel is determined. So what Rabbi Frankel was onto in terms of developing a unique Jewish student organization was that the whole point was to empower students, that this wasn't just about creating another Jewish organization. They needed to create upcoming Jewish leaders in the community. So the structure of Hillel as such is that obviously you have members, but more importantly, you have your lay leaders and you have a staff member or some sort of professional above. But really, the critical decisions that are made in terms of the community and the Jewish life and any sort of important things that need to be decided falls on the responsibility of these students, which was completely unique to what was already some sort of Jewish activity that was already going on campus. So this kind of work empowered students and gave them a sense of authority as to how they wanted to shape their Jewish community on campus. Obviously, when people go to college, many of these students, it's the first time that they're living away from home, that they don't have the influence of their family or their parents dictating how to, learn or interact in Jewish life. So this is really a kind of liberating, but also, this is an important time for a lot of these college students to solidify how they want their Jewish experience on campus and what they want their Jewish community that they're going to be living in for a couple of years to look like. So in 1924, Rabbi Frankel sees the success of the Hillel organization at the University of Illinois and decides that we need to go a step further and we need to appeal to a larger funding organization to make this thing stick. So he goes to B'nai B'rith. And when he's giving a speech at B'nai B'rith, there's actually the quote, I'm not sure if it came out okay in the copies, but he says that his speech, as a rule, the Jewish student is passively Jewish and he's not sure of his Jewish learning. When he enters the university and finds what he interprets as anti-Semitism, he ducks his head in the sand like an ostrich and thinks he has solved the problem. So, this is really, this is an upsetting thing, but this is what had been the culture of many Jewish students had been doing for years on college campuses when dealing with discrimination or anti-Semitism. Put your head down and just don't even deal with it. But in reality, this Hillel organization was creating Jewish leaders that they would eventually be able to stand up to people who would say things like this or do things like this. B'nai B'rith approves the motion to adopt the Hillel organization under B'nai B'rith. And over the next couple of years, they request Rabbi Frankel to open Hillel organizations at other parts of the Midwest. So we see the establishment of Hillel at the University of Wisconsin, at Ohio State, and at the University of Michigan. In 1927, Rabbi Frankel dies suddenly. He was 30 years old when he was visiting Palestine. He developed endocarditis, and as a result, one of his colleagues, who was one of the other founders, Rabbi Louis Mann, took over his post for about 5 years until it was eventually transitioned over to Abram Sakhar, who became the first full-time national director of Hillel. So Sakhar was a different kind of leader than Rabbi Frankel. He wasn't a rabbi, so he came more from an administrative background. And he was excellent at fundraising. He had really good relationships with Jewish federations and B'nai B'rith, and was able to secure even more funding and to solidify Hillel's position in the Jewish community in the United States. But he was also a scholar, and he realized that in order for Hillel to be even more impactful than it had already been in its short amount of time, that it wasn't just about creating a social or religious space for Jewish students to congregate in on college campuses, that they needed to be Jewish learning centers. At the time, a lot of these college campuses weren't offering classes, anything regarding Judaism or Jewish studies or Jewish culture, so they decided to bring those courses into the Hillel space. And so you have these Jewish students that are coming and learning about, at various Jewish topics. But what was interesting was that other students at these respective universities were coming into these Hillel spaces, not necessarily Jewish, who were curious to learn about Jewish life. And while I'm not saying that having these non-Jewish students come into these Hillel spaces cured college campuses of anti-Semitism, but this was really the first time that Jewish students and non-Jewish students were able to come together in an actual Jewish space and learn and kind of understand each other and build relationships. And this was a powerful moment, and Sakhar kind of bought into that. In the 1930s, Hillel continues to expand even though the Great Depression is going on, and it establishes there's now 11 active Hillels on the college campus. So at this time, Jewish students take up about 9% of the college campus population, and Sakhar realizes that a lot of these Hillels are all in the Midwest. It's time to expand east. So he recognizes that he has his eye on New York State, recognizes there's lots of Jewish students there. A lot of these students need to travel distances because New York State is a relatively large state to get to better higher education institutions. And he decides that Brooklyn College is going to be the first East Coast-based school to receive a Hillel, and that happens in 1939. At the time, Brooklyn College had 8,000 Jewish students on their campus, which is pretty sizable. But the Hillel had issues kind of breaking in because many of these Jewish students took it upon themselves to create these social organizations. They weren't necessarily Jewish related or Jewish themes, but it just happened for a way for Jewish students, it organically happened that created by Jews would come, but it was just a social thing. There wasn't any sort of religious or cultural or Jewish education component to these organizations. So that was kind of the way that Hillel needed to break into that, even though things had already been established on campus. But they did, and it became very successful on Brooklyn College's campus. In 1930, in the later part, the outbreak of World War II and the Holocaust, Hillel students were very active during that time. Two particular programs that they were involved in at various Hillel chapters. One is the refugee student program. If you look on page 8, there's some photos showing that basically Hillel students raised funds to bring European students over to the United States to escape the Nazis and to receive a college education at their respective institution. So they had over 64 European refugees that came after 1940. And this program even continued after World War II had ended, and this program was expanded to bring Holocaust survivors to the United States who were looking to start their lives over and to become educated. So Hillel was instrumental in really helping some folks over from various European countries. Hillel was also responsible for helping with the Jewish Welfare Board, which was an initiative to help bring religious and social needs to the thousands of Jewish soldier students who were on, at this point, 144 different campuses in the United States. And basically their goal was to help these people prior to deployment and coming home to give them, bring them back into campus life and to integrate them into the Hillel community as well. If you see on page 8, there's a photo of students at Indiana University who sponsored a Seder for military trainees from College Station, Texas. So these were for them, so that's just an example. But their whole point was that when I was doing some of this research and I found an old brochure from one of these Hillels of the Jewish Welfare Board, was that their whole point was that Hillel offers the Jewish students, it's not just a superficial corned beef Judaism, that this is really a spectrum Hillel does not fall under any particular branch of the Jewish faith. And so there's really a lot of flexibility and really a lot of different ways that students can get integrated into Hillel life at whatever comfort level that they have. By the 1950s, Hillel was steadily growing. It was on 200 campuses at this point. But by the 1960s and 70s, a lot of Jewish students were not really focusing on building Hillel communities, but were more concerned about some of the social, some of the social justice causes that were going on at the time. You see pictures of students posing with Martin Luther King in the 1960s. Berkeley Hillel, there was an anti-war protest, these kinds of things that, and this was hard. Hillel was having a hard time competing because, they were kind of seen as this establishment. So Hillel tried riding this wave of, social justice causes, talking about the issues in the Soviet Union at the time for the Jewish population and the persecution that Ethiopians were dealing with as well in Ethiopia. But Hillel was kind of losing traction, and the national funders were recognizing that they needed to have major cutbacks. So at this point, the Hillels were kind of isolated on their own college campus. They didn't really interact with the local community if the college campus was close to it. So now, Hillels are starting to come to local Jewish federations in these communities and seeking funding. And this is where you start seeing this kind of bridge of college campus Hillels opening up to the larger community, because of funding and realizing that there needs to be more growth. So finally we get to, yes?
Also, as part of this social action that was going on in the 70s, weren't there a lot of protests about the treatment of Jews in the Soviet Union?
Oh yes, so that was one of the ways that Hillel recognized that a lot of students were very concerned about social causes. So a lot of people were focusing, whether it was Vietnam or civil rights or the women's movement, they said, hey, like there's persecution of Jews still in the Soviet Union and Ethiopia, but for whatever reason, it still didn't have that same, because it seemed far away, like it didn't have that same volume that a lot of things that were going on in the United States at the time.
Well, I was a student at the University of Michigan in the 70s, and we protested a group of Soviet dancers in our campus.
Oh.
We were outside the theater holding up the sign.
Oh, really? Oh, great. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. So now we get to Stockton State College, which is now known as Stockton University, and the birth of their Jewish Student Union, which was founded in 1984 by Professor Yitzhak Sharon, who is a brilliant physics teacher at Stockton and is still one of the faculty advisors to Stockton Hillel. It was one of 80 clubs established at Stockton State College, and at the time, Stockton had about 5,000 undergraduate students. I honestly don't know how many Jewish students were at Stockton at that time. I can't really find records of that, but I know that the Jewish Student Union held a great deal of respect on campus. They started this program called the Student, Faculty, and Staff Dinner, which was basically, it's like a pre-Thanksgiving dinner. The whole point is that students are supposed to invite a faculty member or staff member to come to a complimentary dinner that's hosted on campus, and a couple of different partners, whether it's the president's office or other student clubs, and it's a way for you to kind of say thank you to a faculty member or staff member. I tell my students when we organize this to try to, if you need to get a couple extra points or get some brownie points with a particular faculty member, you should definitely invite them to this dinner prior to Thanksgiving. But Hillel was, it was not a particularly large Hillel just because there wasn't a pretty large Jewish population. But at the time, it had a great deal of respect. At the time, Dr. Vera Faris King, who was the president of Stockton at the time, had a great deal of respect for Hillel. And to this day, this annual student, faculty, and staff dinner is still held on campus, and Hillel is one of the primary sponsors of this program. So fast forward to September of 2015. And that is when, and various name changes, we now are an official Hillel organization on campus. We have a total number of about 500 Jewish students on campus with a shade under 10,000 undergraduate total. And I will be honest, when I started in September of 2015, there were really only about 4 real active members of Hillel. And those were the 4 young women who held officer positions for the club. They knew that it was important, but the Hillel, prior to when I arrived, any staff member wouldn't stay there for longer than a year or two. So there was, if you don't have, and having a staff member was one of those critical components of the Hillel concept. And if you don't have someone there to help build that foundation, it can't sustain itself. So we made it a mission to go out and really try to help and find students. As of now, we have about 55 people on our email list. We have anywhere between 10 to 50 people who come out to our events, depending on the kinds of events that we have. Our students, in terms of their makeup and demographics, come from all different kinds of family life. Some of our students, they do come from, a 100% Jewish household, but I do have a lot of students who come from a household that is Jewish, but also has another religious component to it. But everybody is there to be interested in Judaism and to learn about Judaism. But I think that's really reflective of the times that we're living in right now. We also do have students that happen to not be Jewish, but I have students who come all the time. They love learning about holidays, and they love to bring their sorority sisters, and it's really wonderful because that shows that Hillel is an open organization and that we are committed to our Jewish message, but we also are team players on our campus, and we would love to bring more people in. The difference, though, with our students versus if you look at really active Hillels, like at the University of Pennsylvania, Kansas University, our population is a commuter population. All of my students, and I say this, all of my students either are working part-time or full-time going through college. So when we do programming, I can't do, well, depending on things, we have brought back Shabbat dinners, but we do them on a monthly basis. Because I have students that have to take time off, 2 months notice, but they make a point of changing their work schedule because they want to be at our Shabbat dinner on a Friday night. So, we do have to kind of make those changes. It's not the way that when I was in college at Goucher, that the Hillel at on Goucher's campus had Friday night dinners every single week and had programs every single day. We really try to cater our programming to our students in the way that their schedules are fixed. I have students that do 12-hour days, 2 days a week, and that's it. They don't live there. It's very, very different dynamic, but that's okay. But we cater to them for that. On slides 12 and 13, you can kind of see some of a few photos that that we have since I've been the director. Our students love food, and they love celebrating holidays like Sukkot and Hanukkah. And we have brought back a Shabbat monthly dinner, which is really wonderful when we do have students come. But our students, one of their biggest passions is doing interfaith work. Hillel is one of the organizations that sit on Stockton's Campus Religious Council with other religious organizations that are established. And surprisingly, our strongest student ally is our Muslim Student Association, which is really unheard of at a lot of other universities. But the friendships and the relationships that the students have with our Muslim students and our Jewish students is very strong. And we actually have hosted successfully 2 kosher halal dinners on campus that have brought out over 50 to 60 people. And this is all student run. On my first day, I'm telling you, I met with these 4 young women, and the president looked at me and said, "We have a kosher halal dinner going on next month." And I said, "What?" Just because when you walk in and you hear all these stories of all these anti-Israel protests and all this tension between Jewish and Muslim students, and I can honestly say we've sent delegations of Hillel students with other faith-based organizations to leadership conferences on interfaith work, and it's really something to be proud of, and it is something that makes our Hillel stand out on campus. We've done Shabbatons with Rutgers. I brought Birthright to campus last summer, so we've had 2 groups of students go on Hillel trips through Birthright, and we do have one that is going to be leaving in mid-May after graduation. In terms of the issues that our students are dealing with, and this is generally speaking, on Stockton's campus, I can honestly say, thank goodness, we have not had any anti-Semitic incidents, and we have not had any anti-Israel incidents occur on campus while I've been on campus. The only time that I've heard, and when I've tried to do some investigative work on if there's been any sort of BDS or Students for Justice of Palestine or any sort of things like that. Apparently one professor who came from the outside came in to speak to professors, came to speak about anti-Israel sentiment. This was a couple of years ago. And people showed up for it, but then they left, and there was really no follow-up protest or follow-up outcry or anything like that. So I am grateful for that, but that doesn't mean that anti-Semitism is on the rise. In the past few years alone, Jewish hate crimes have been reported more than any other religious organization in this country. And in this particular statistic that I got from the ADL, in 2014 and 15, more than half of American Jewish college students experienced or witnessed anti-Semitism. And now anti-Semitism kind of flows into the also anti-Israel sentiment because of how strong the BDS movement has come onto college campuses. But in terms of harassment, physical is really not, that's not really often reported. It's more of this verbal, whether it's online. Online is probably the strongest in terms of whether it's, on social media or graffitiing some sort of, derogatory slur or swastika. Those are probably the most common things that do happen in terms of anti-Semitism. But really the biggest issue is the anti-Israel. And that's with the boycott divestment sanctions, which is BDS, which really started to gain traction after the second Intifada in 2000-2001. By 2004, they had really gained tractions in the United States and Europe. And they're they're incorporated in all of society, but particularly on college campuses, it's hotbed because you have this draw for students and faculty, administration, and student organizations, and everything becomes highly politicized and very public. And BDS is very good at getting people's attention. That's one thing. I know a lot of times they will host events such as die-ins. I didn't want to show pictures of it, but die-ins are basically where students will protest and cover themselves in fake blood and have all these like anti-Israel and making these genocidal claims against Israel. Same thing with Apartheid Week. A lot of times these BDS groups and Students for the Justice of Palestine will plan their Apartheid Week in conjunction when Hillels and other Jewish organizations are doing Yom HaAtzmaut celebrations. And this can be a very difficult time for college students to be able to, kind of narrow these, these turbulent waters. When you have these people in your face, it can be really upsetting for American Jewish college students. So what do we do? Education is key. I've seen some instances where, people will host education workshops or seminars and try to partner with other student groups on campus trying to bring Israel in. Also just showcasing things that Israel is everything is about politics with Israel, but that people don't know anything else about Israel. So they try to kind of pull in other aspects of Israeli life to try to normalize it than besides what, SJP and the BDS do. But I am grateful and really think that a lot of the work and a lot of this lack of any sort of BDS or SJP activity is because of the relationship that we do have with our Muslim Student Association as well as other diversity groups on campus. I know on Tuesday, who is familiar with TED Talks? Okay, so for those of you who don't know what TED Talks are basically like a 15-minute speech that somebody will give on any sort of particular topic they're like a particular expert on. And so the Asian Student Alliance approached Hillel and other religious groups and cultural groups on campus to talk about their experiences with discrimination. And I do have Hillel students, I have been working with some, who are going to be speaking about their experiences with anti-Semitism for the first time in public. And I think that this is something that our Hillel has never done. And at the same time that we are being included in this and that we felt the need that we needed to speak out because of the political climate and everything that has been going on. But at the end, it's not all doom and gloom. I can tell you that my work is so inspiring when I work with these students, that my students, we may be small, but we're mighty. They're very passionate, they care deeply, and they really do take control of how they want their Hillel. Not every Hillel looks the same. Everyone cares about different things, and We don't have a building the way that UPenn has a building, and we don't have the kind of funds that a lot of these Big Ten schools might have. But that doesn't mean that the quality of work and the way that students are so passionate and care deeply about Judaism and making Hillel more visible on campus. So I leave you with that. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Stockton is one of the few colleges that has a Holocaust program, which I'm really familiar with. How do you interact with that?
Yes, I actually have a great deal of, I actually graduated with my master's in Holocaust and Genocide Studies from Stockton University this past spring. And that's where I was, and I agree. I think that, so the Holocaust and Genocide Studies program, they have a graduate level and an undergraduate level. And it is the largest academic catalog in the world for Holocaust classes in the world and in the Pine Barrens. Like, why would you think that would happen? It's because of the hard work and the passing of the law for Holocaust education at the state of New Jersey in the early 90s. And there are lots of students that come into these classes. When I started my graduate work a couple of years ago, I was the only Jewish student in the program. People were shocked, especially Jewish people were shocked to think that Jewish people aren't coming into these kinds of programs. But I think having those courses, especially at the undergraduate level, has really helped create a culture of tolerance. The fact that so many people who aren't necessarily Jewish are learning about the Holocaust and other Jewish topics. I have students that have gone to Jewish women's courses and about the Bible and all these things. It creates this culture of tolerance on campus, and I appreciate you bringing up that point because I think it has a great deal.
The reason is my aunt was very active in that. Ruth Kessler, she passed away a couple of months ago.
I knew Ruth, yes. Oh my gosh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm very involved with it and make a lot of donations to that.
Oh, well, you do a lot. They do an incredible amount of work in terms of producing memoirs for Holocaust survivors, sending students to Eastern Europe to study on site. And that was, I went on a trip 2-3 years ago, and yeah, I was one of 3 Jewish students out of a group of 45 that went, so, yes.
You encounter much anti-Semitism down there?
Down in the Pine Barrens at Stockton? Luckily, no. I mean, granted, I've only been there for about a year and a half, but I have spoken with students, and if they've been on campus longer, and thank goodness they have not experienced any anti-Semitism on campus.
Are there rival anti-Jewish groups?
Anti-Jewish groups? No. We luckily do not have any sort of Students for the Justice of Palestine or BDS groups. We don't have any official groups like those on campus. I have never encountered them. I have done Israel programming on campus, and I've never had issue with that, luckily.
And worldwide, is there communication between the two types?
You mean communication?
The Arab pro-Arab and the pro-Israel.
Sure. I mean, I know that there was a speaker at the JCC. I think it was this past Thursday, who's a Palestinian activist, but he's in support of Israel and is against BDS. So I know that, and those types of things don't get the kind of news, bad news sells. But I know that there is definitely, there are organizations out there. I can't pinpoint them exactly, but I know that this gentleman was asked to come speak in our community for a second time because of his impact with being in support of Israel, but also being a Palestinian activist at the same time.
I got 2 questions. One is
Yes.
how much does Saudi Arabia play in this? We know that they are involved in a lot of teaching of hate. And these young people who are on these campuses, are they being funded by various groups, particularly Saudi Arabia, and the Muslim students that you have on campus? Do they speak out publicly about some of the actions that are going on with the other campuses and stuff?
So I don't really know specifically if Saudi Arabia deals with, in terms of funding. I don't really know who funds a lot of BDS, but I know that, there is a lot of, one of the bigger issues is that there are faculty members who openly speak out about BDS and being in support of BDS. And that can have, an impact on students, especially if you're sitting in a seminar course and you're listening to a professor who's obviously anti-Israel, And that can obviously have an effect if you have a classroom with a couple hundred people in it. I don't really know about funding specifically with BDS, but regarding the Muslim Student Association on our campus, to my knowledge, they have not spoken out against anything regarding... Why not?
They should, if they're so pro.
No, they're not.
They're not speaking out. Are they afraid? Are they intimidated, or what?
Well, I mean, the Muslim Student Association, with the work that we've done with them is really primarily regarding interfaith work. I know that last year there were incidences of Islamophobia going on around campus, and there was a rally to kind of show in solidarity it was especially after the Bataclan attacks in Paris. And Hillel and a couple of other student organizations stood up against that kind of behavior. There have been incidences since the election against Muslim students as well. There have been kind of this trying to create, a sense of unity on campus. But no,
How about, have they stood up against the various things that happen to Jews on campus? You stood up and Hillel for them, but what about them standing up for Jews who have been intimidated and stuff like that?
Well, so I mean, I can only speak from our campus. Thank goodness we haven't had anti-Semitic incidences happen on campus. But I know for a fact that regarding the incident that happened in St. Louis with the vandalism of for the cemetery, that some of the Muslim students were collecting money for that particular incident in St. Louis.
Concerned about your own case. You got concerned about the French and the problem there with the Muslims. You didn't stay on your campus, or Hillel, not your particular campus. Hillel got involved in that with the French problem. Why aren't some of the Arab students who are supposedly, very friendly with you, going on to other places besides Stockton?
I mean, I can't speak for those organizations, and we didn't speak out because of it. It just so happened after the Bataclan incident in Paris that there were incidences of Muslim students being harassed or abused. Okay, is there any other questions? That's fine.
James.
Anyone else that has a question? Yes.
Just one more.
As Atlantic County native, there's a very active Jewish community in the surrounding area. You mentioned that there are about 500 Jewish students. What is the level of Jewish awareness among those students, number one? And number two is, can you tell me a little bit about the interaction between Hillel and Stockton and the Atlantic County and the whatever community?
Sure. So the 500 Jewish students, surprisingly, at least the students that are active in Hillel aren't from Atlantic County. They actually come from North Jersey. So I have a lot of students that either come from this area or North Jersey. In terms of our interaction with Atlantic and Cape May County residents, so number one, Hillel would not be functioning right now without Atlantic and Cape May County donations. We are funded 100% by the Jewish Federation, and as a result, we have community members who sit on advisory boards, really trying to help dictate what we should be doing on campus, what they would like to see, how they can help sending students, to programs. But we have given back to the surrounding, really more in the local area, I would say in the Margate, Atlantic City area. We are actually doing a social action Shabbat next month. We receive food donations from Seashore Gardens, which is an old age home. And so we'll be going back and doing programs with the seniors and doing Shabbat dinner with them. We've also have partnered with synagogues in the area, using their kitchens for baking for Purim, and having, inviting us to services. That's the one thing I can say is that the Jewish community down in the Atlantic City area is so warm. Granted, it is an aging community. It is a lot smaller than it has been in decades, but they are so open and are always giving us free tickets for the high holidays, or if you need a student who needs food on a Shabbos weekend, they're very, very warm and hospitable.
When I was in Stockton, there were a lot of Jewish faculty members, but yourself was the main person who was involved in Jewish issues. What level of involvement is there among the faculty with Hillel or with Jewish?
Yeah, sure. So we actually have 3 to 4 faculty advisors that are in all different departments. It's not just the Jewish Studies department and the physics department and history, a couple of different areas. So we answer to community board member advisory groups, students, and faculty. So the faculty are very hands-on. I know they are busy and have their own lives, but at the same time, we invite them all the time. They come out and support and promote our programs, more importantly. I would say primarily in terms of Hillel, we really have 4 to 5 that are really accurate. Really active in our work.
And we have to stop at this point. Excuse me, gentlemen. I want to thank Andrea for coming here today, and I'm so really hopeful she'll be. I certainly hope that she'll be sitting next to me at all JCRC events. And I know she brought her parents here today, and I'm sure you're very proud of your daughter, and we thank you for coming with us. We have one more ceremony with Andrea, but before I do, I forgot to make an announcement. You know, at every meeting, we've been bringing food for the Jewish Family Service. We have a book exchange in the back, toiletries for the Women's Shelter and the Yellow Ribbon Club. And look, somebody brought a pile of stuff. I thank you for doing that. At our next meeting, however, since we're meeting at the synagogue, we will not be bringing books and other activities, eyeglasses, cell phones, things like that. So we'll see you at that next meeting. We have one more duty for you.
Oh, sure.
And you have to participate in our 50-50, so.
Oh, gosh.
It's $52. Can you not-
Yes.
Oh, it's $52 for the 50-50.
Picture with
Where's the certificate?
Oh.
Okay, the certificate is, I told you that Prozac was effective.
It's old stuff.
Get the banner. Get the banner.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Banner? Or is the banner? Every time. Get the coat of bud.
This is our certificate of appreciation for you
Oh,
being here.
thank you so
Thanks
much.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Thank you for having me. Oh. All right. Who's it going to be? There's no name.
No, it's the
Oh, the number, sorry. 724306. Anyone?
Wait a minute.
Oh, you got it?
What's the number?
724306. You got it. Oh, okay. Oh, mazel tov.
Mike has a quick announcement. Say it. I don't know what it is. Say it.
Today, excuse me, gentlemen. Today and on Tuesday, the Jewish Museum in Philadelphia over at 5th and Market, it's usually $12. Admittance, it's free. So today and Tuesday, it is free. That's it.
If you want to buy a ticket for the movie, Dave is right over here.
Our next meeting at? Across the street.
Any good in welfare? Anybody want to say anything? Have a good month, guys.